a slug in a gutter. So I'm better, but not healed. So you're going to get a little bipolar preaching experience this Eastertide season. Weird church happens in weird places to weird people in weird ways. I mean, just look at this story. The desert. Imagine God saying to you, get up and go to Death Valley and look for the first person you can find on a horse and join him. Would you go? This Ethiopian eunuch, if you're not sure what a eunuch means, you can look that up on your smartphone or go to the library and look it up. It's a man who's been castrated so that he can serve in the kingdom of a queen in Ethiopia. He is an ethnic minority. He is a racial minority. He is a sexual minority. And yet he is hungry to know the Word of God. We're told he went to Jerusalem to worship, and what's interesting about that is that there's a scripture in Deuteronomy that says no eunuchs are allowed in the temple to worship. But he went anyway, and here he is on his way home, and the even weirder thing than the eunuch himself in the wilderness road is the Spirit telling Philliip that this is a guy who's prime for the Jesus movement. Hey Philliip, forget all these people in the city here where there's this metropolitan gathering of folks. Go to the desert and find this one Ethiopian eunuch. And I think even weirder than that is that Philliip actually goes. So he got up and went. That may be the most important scripture in our passage this morning. He got up and went. And when he did, all he did was ask the guy, do you know what you're reading? And before you know it, the guy's inviting him into his chariot, and then we got a baptism on our hands. Weird. Weird church happens in weird places to weird people in weird ways. So I thought maybe instead of me preaching today, you'd like to hear a weird preacher. I mean, not that I'm not a weird preacher, but like you'd like to hear maybe one of my favorite weird preachers, Nadia Bolz-Weber. I've mentioned her to you several times. I'm hoping to go visit her church during my sabbatical. And I'm hoping that some folks from her church will come to visit you guys while I'm on sabbatical. The church she started is House for All Sinners and Saints in Denver, Colorado. And this little video clip I'm going to show you of Nadia is from 2013, so it's 5 years ago. She was preaching, or she was a keynote speaker for a national Lutheran youth gathering in the city of New Orleans. And the whole thing's about 20 minutes long, but we're not going to watch all of it today, so I'm just telling you that. If you'd like to go watch the whole thing, all you have to do is Google her name on YouTube. I'll get Lizzie to put the link in the newsletter this week so you can catch it. We're going to watch the beginning of her talk and then the end of her talk. And then I'll tell you a little bit about why I want you to see this particular testimony by this weird preacher, Nadia Bolz-Weber.
To be in New Orleans, I just want to get one thing out of the way. Am I the only one who has beignet belly right now? Anyone else go to Cafe Du Monde, have a little beignet belly going on? Yeah. So my name is Nadia Bolz-Weber. I am a pastor in the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America. Maybe you heard of that. And when people meet me and they're like, so what do you do? And I say, I'm a Lutheran pastor, they're never like, oh, that makes sense. They go, what do you do? And I'm like, I'm a Lutheran pastor. And they look at me like I'm lying or I'm joking, generally. And it's weird because it makes me feel like people have this idea of what Lutheran looks like. And I'm here to say sometimes people are wrong, right? So I wasn't always Lutheran. I wasn't like raised Lutheran. And unlike some of you who I suspect have been Lutheran since before you were born, I didn't grow up Lutheran. I grew up in a different tradition. It was kind of a fundamentalist tradition. And they had a couple weird things going on. It was called, well, I won't tell you what it's called, but it was like Baptist Plus, right? So there were a few things going on at that church. One is they thought they were the only Christians. They thought they were the only people going to heaven. Like, I'd have a friend, and they'd be like, hey, is your new friend Susie a Christian? I'd have to be like, no, she's a Methodist. So it was weird. They thought they were the only Christians. And the other weird thing they had going on had to do with women. Like, women couldn't be pastors, and women couldn't be ushers, and women couldn't even pray out loud in front of men. And so, needless to say, I didn't develop my personality a few months ago. I was kind of born with this, right? So let's just say they were not interested in having my flavor in their gumbo. Right? I fell in love with you guys. I fell in love with Lutheran liturgy and Lutheran theology, but I would go and visit Lutheran churches, and I'd look around, and no one looked like me. My friends are not going to those churches, and it's not because you're doing something wrong. It's because me and my friends would have to kind of culturally commute from who we are to who the church is. And so what happened over a period of years is I felt a call to be a pastor to my people. I felt a call to offer what I had been given to other people, right? So I went to seminary. Somehow I got ordained. It's a miracle. And I started House for All Sinners and Saints with 8 people in my living room 4 years ago. Now there's about 180 people. And it's great. It's great. So there's more people. We baptized 8 people at the Easter Vigil this year. We had 6 adults confirmed at Pentecost. I mean, what's happening at House for All Sinners and Saints is that people like myself are hearing the gospel of Jesus Christ, and they're doing it in a context where they don't have to check part of who they are at the door. All the flavors are welcome. And for a while, it was mostly young adults, and everyone was a little bit the same, and it is not that way anymore. We now have ex-convicts next to elected officials, next to soccer moms, next to transgender kids, next to aging hipsters. It's like you walk into church, you look around, you go, I am unclear what all these people have in common. And here's what you need to know about this thing you have, this Lutheran liturgy and this Lutheran theology, the whole tradition. It is a feast. And it is a feast to be shared. And I'm here to tell you, people are hungry. People are hungry. And you have a feast entrusted to you, and they are ready for it. So in closing, I want to say this. When I was in seminary, I had, I think, the only pious thought I've had in my entire life. And it was this: I just want God to use me. And now I feel kind of used by God, honestly. Sometimes it doesn't feel good. But isn't that the miracle? Because you know what? Some of your parents and some of your pastors were really upset that I was your speaker tonight. They felt like I was somebody who should not be allowed to talk to tens of thousands of teenagers. And you know what I have to say to that? They are absolutely right. Somebody with my past of alcoholism and drug abuse and promiscuity and lying and stealing should not be allowed to talk to you. But you know what? Someone with my present, who I am now, shouldn't be allowed to talk to you. Because I am a sarcastic, heavily tattooed, I swear like a truck driver. They're having a heart attack back there going, please help her not swear. I am a flawed person. I should not be allowed to be here talking to you, but you know what? That's the God we're dealing with, people. before I leave, I want to tell you about this God for 30 seconds. This is a God who has always used imperfect people. This is a God whose loving desire to be known overflowed the heavens and became manifest in the rapidly dividing cells inside the womb of an insignificant peasant girl in first-century Palestine. This is a God who slipped into skin and walked among us full of grace and truth with sand between his toes, and who ate with all the wrong people and kissed lepers and touched the unclean and spoke through thirsty women and hungry men, and who from the cross did not even lift a finger to condemn the enemy, but instead said, "I would rather die than be in the sin accounting business anymore." This is a God who rose from the dead and grilled fish on the beach and then ascended to heaven, and is especially present to us in the most offensively ordinary things: wheat, wine, water, words. And this God has never made sense, and you don't need to either, because this God will use you. This God will use all of you, and not just your strengths, but your failures and your failings and your brokenness. And God's strength is perfected in human weakness. So your brokenness is fertile ground for a forgiving God to make something new and to make something beautiful. So don't ever think that all you have to offer is your gifts, because God's going to use you too. God's going to use all of you, and the world better watch out, because you know what? That's what it looks like to be a Lutheran.
Amen? Amen. Yeah. There's no doubt that Nadia is weird. She looks weird. She's had a weird life. It's weird that she got called into the ministry. It's weird that there's a church that would be led by her. And that's not surprising to me at all. Because this God we're dealing with, as she says, is weird. This weird God calls weird people to go to weird places and to tell the good news in weird ways. Nadia has a great sermon about Philliip and the Ethiopian eunuch that you can look up online. And in that sermon, she talks about how in the church she grew up in, she was always taught that, you got to tell everybody about Jesus, because you never know when you might be able to convert somebody to become like us. And they use the story of Philliip going to the desert and converting this Ethiopian eunuch. But as she tells the story, she says that she thinks the person who's converted is not so much the eunuch as Philliip. Because Philip's the one who has to leave what's normal and comfortable. He's the one that has to leave the city and go to the desert. He's the one that has to go to a stranger. In other words, Philliip has to go be the stranger in a stranger's presence. Philliip has to go to a strange place. The really strange thing, I think, and this is from what Nadia said, but I agree with her. The really strange thing is not so much that the Ethiopian gets converted, but that Philliip, who is a leader of the Jesus movement, he gets converted too. Because he finds out that God is interested in people who don't fit the mold. He probably thought he was going to be starting a church of, middle upper class Samaritans or something like that in Samaria. He'd have a nice, local church in the big city. But God sent him to the desert and said, hey, these are the kind of people I want in my church. So God caused Philliip to be a stranger in order to reach strangers. I like that. You know, that's the thing about Nadia. She didn't really have to become a stranger because she already was. Because of her life, her story is amazing. You'll hear more about it as we get closer to my sabbatical. But she was already a stranger because of her lifestyle. She had, due to an autoimmune disorder, had gone through a lot of bullying as a kid and ended up turning to alcohol and drugs for comfort. And when she came out of that through AA, which was really what first converted her, before she ever really became reconverted to the Christian faith, which she had left, as she said in the clip, she knew that people like her were hungry to know that God loved them and accepted them. The reason she says she loves Lutheran theology, and we skipped that part of the clip, but I think it's important to know, is that one of the main tenets of Lutheranism or principles of Lutheranism is based on Martin Luther's statement that human beings are 100% sinner and 100% saint all the time. And she said that really resonated with her because as a recovering alcoholic and drug addict and person who thought she was going to be dead by 30, she knew that she had an enormous capacity for self-destruction. She knew she had an enormous capacity for destroying the people around her. But she also knew that that wasn't all there was to her. I mean, yeah, those were a lot of things she wasn't proud of, and a lot of bad stuff that had happened in her life, and a lot of it of her own choosing. Choices she made, and she knows that. She doesn't aggrandize that in any way or glorify it in any way. She talks about the real pain and consequences of that in her life. But she also said, you know, she knows that she also had an enormous capacity to be kind and to love and to be generous. So she knew in her own being that 100% sinner and 100% saint. And she knew there's a whole bunch of people in the world just like her, but who didn't feel comfortable in the traditional church. And so when she did feel the call from God to go into the ministry, she finally decided that she needed to reach the strange people like herself. And she needed to start a church for strange people, for weird people. So where does that leave us? Because we are, even though we're a cool church and we're a fun church and we're disciples of Christ, so we're by and large we agree to disagree, which leaves all kinds of room for a variety of understandings about God and church and faith, and so this is a good place where everybody's welcome. And yet, we're still traditional church. We're still traditional white, mainline, upper middle class Americans. And if God's calling us to do stranger things, I don't know that it's going to happen by just being here at 1139 Tanbark Road in Lexington, Kentucky. I mean, we put our open and affirming welcome statement on the door a year ago. April 2017. And we have yet to really reach the community, the broader Lexington community. And I have to think that's because your pastor spends way too much time with church people. I'm going to take a cue from Philliip, and I'm going to go do some stranger things. I'm going to go be the stranger, and this is not comfortable for Bennie Braddick because, believe it or not, I'm shy. I really am. I'm not shy around you because I know you. But when I'm around people I don't know, I get shy. But I've decided that if we really want this good news about God loving you as you are, that we really are an open and affirming place where all are welcome, then I've got to get out and meet those people and be with those people. And that means I've got to spend less time with church people and more time with strangers. So I've got Lizzie, my assistant, who's 26. I got her to put a notice on Facebook to start to see if there's anybody interested in a weird Bible study with a weird person. Don't even say that I'm a preacher. And I'm not putting it on the Twin Pines website, and we're not going to have it at Twin Pines. We're going to have it in a weird place. I don't know where that's going to be. Maybe the bars on Manchester District. Maybe at Marika's. Maybe in the park, the Arboretum or somewhere. But that's only the beginning. And I'm going to be looking for more opportunities. And my question for you is, what kind of stranger things is God calling you to do? And if you say, Bennie, I can't do that, that's great, you want to do it, but you're the preacher, you get paid, forget me. Let me just tag the end of Nadia's message. I don't care what's wrong with you, because what's wrong with you is exactly why God needs you. Exactly why God needs you. To go out and do some stranger things with some strange people. And if you're scared to do that, the good news is we let all kinds of strange people come in this building all the time. That's a joke. You can laugh. I keep hitting them and you keep missing. Wait, I keep pitching them and you keep missing. Cold medicine. We open our building to outside groups, and we need people from Twin Pines to come be the stranger. Even though it's our church, they're here for their thing. And we need you to be here to be the stranger, to welcome them. Not to convert them to Christianity, not to preach to them, just to be here. And say, hey, welcome home. Welcome to our place. We love sharing our space with the community. We like to think about our place being a place where people come in and whether they're here to worship or whether they're here for personal enrichment through some kind of class or the UK's offering, or whether it's through, they're having a party, an engagement party, a graduation party, a bridal shower, a baby shower, whatever it is. We're here to create a space for you to thrive and enjoy life and to enjoy the goodness that God gives us as human beings to share with each other. We start there. So volunteer to be a host. Call Lizzie this week and say, sign me up to host. And there are lots of other things we can do too. This last week was Lex Give Back Week here in Lexington, where we were all encouraged to go and do some ways to give back to the Lexington community, to build up the Lexington community. I got online. Actually, I got Lizzie to get online because she's much better at that than I am. And she's volunteering me to be a tutor for an hour a week. Now, I don't know what will happen there, but that's another way I'm going to try to get out and just be with people who aren't necessarily members of my congregation. And I'm going to tutor. I'm not there to convert them, but I can't share the good news with strangers if I'm not myself a stranger. And in conjunction with that, one of the things that Becky Akers and I did last Monday was we went to the Interfaith United encounter that was at St. Michael's Episcopal and had a worship service with Muslims and Jews and Buddhists and people of the New Age persuasion, and of course Protestants and Catholics. We had a great worship experience where we gave voice to breaking down these barriers that we have between each other that make us strangers to each other. And at that event, I met a wonderful Muslim lady who invited me to a community Ramadan dinner that's going to be at the Boone Center at UK on Saturday night, May 19th, and it's open to the entire community. Now, they can only serve 200 people, so it's first come, first serve. You have to RSVP, but you're invited. So if you want to know, I said something about going out and meeting the other about a year ago. And a lot of you came up to me and said, Bennie, that's a great idea, but I don't know any other people. Okay, here's your opportunity. Sign up to go to the Ramadan dinner. or sign up to host one of the Ramadan dinners we're going to host here, or we're going to allow them to host their dinner here. There's lots of ways to do stranger things, and this is only the beginning. The thing is that you never know when there might be somebody like Nadia who, for whatever reason, has felt like they didn't fit. And they're just at a place of their life that they need to know that there's a place that they don't have to check their flavor at the door. And folks, if there's a place that's like that in Lexington, I think it's Twin Pines. This place, we ought to be packed out standing room only every Sunday, and we're not. And that's not on God. And that's not on the other people, that's on me. And that's on us. And this good news is too good to just keep it here. Like Nan said, I mean, you go see a good movie, you got to tell everybody about it. You go eat at a good restaurant, the first thing you do is say, Kate, you got to go with me to Babalu. They got the most amazing Mexican food. Right? Right, Kate? You going to go? Okay. This news is too good for just us. It's too good for us. I mean, Nadia's life was saved because she met somebody who told her about this weird Lutheran church. And she was really suspect for a long time. I mean, she didn't go for a long time. And it was a slow process. But it's because somebody was willing to engage a weirdo like Nadia. She met the person who told her about Lutheranism at a volleyball game. Turned out to be eventually her husband. But he told her about Lutheranism before they ever had their first date. She met him at a volleyball game because she said that's the sacred breeding grounds for tall people. Yeah, Benny's not a very good volleyball player. But I got heels now, so. You just never know. You never know what weird places God is calling us to. Weird church happens in weird places with weird people in weird ways. And the only thing I know to do with that is to pray. So I invite you to a time of prayer. I invite you, as we sing our prayer song, to listen for God's voice. Where's God? What Gaza is God calling you to go to? And if you're just feeling weird about yourself today, please hear the good news of prayer time today. There's nothing that's too weird in you for God. God made you weird and loves you weird, and God's going to use your weird in totally weird, cool ways. So celebrate it. And maybe you have a weird person you love that needs a church home, whether it's here in Lexington or maybe they live somewhere else, and you're just hoping they'll find somebody. Lift them up in prayer this morning. You can light a candle. You can get up and put a prayer in our prayer box, and our prayer team, our weird prayer team, they are weird. I mean, if you haven't met them, the weird thing is they pray all the time. And they're always putting your prayers before God, even if you want to keep them anonymous. The weird thing is they know that God knows, right? So let's just open our hearts and our minds to prayer.